want to start with a little bit of crowd participation before we do that. Who likes being productive? Hands up. You can actually put your hands up if you like it. Yes, all right. I've got a few friends. What about efficiency? Who likes doing things? You're not just productive, but you like being efficient. Yes, all right. So we've got your engineer types in the room. That's me to a T, right? My background is civil engineering. So anyone can sort of build something, but an engineer's job is to do it efficiently. Use the least amount of resources to make the thing still stand up. That was my job. It goes a little further though. This is actually my whole life. This is sort of how I function. It's a little bit embarrassing to share this, but I will sort of take the same track around the house in the morning, getting ready for work, because it involves the least amount of steps to get the jobs done, to get ready for work. I shower the same way every time and dry myself the same way, because it's just the most efficient, quickest way to get it done. What else do I do? Last weekend we had Heidi and I were having a bit of a lunch together. That's my wife. And she's having the last mouthful of her food, and I take the plate from under her and I go put it in the dish rack or in the dish in the sink. And she's like, "What are you doing? I'm still eating my lunch." I'm like, "I'm sorry, I just can't help it." It's just sort of how I am. I love this stuff. I love being efficient and productive. I found that over the years that there are some enemies to efficiency and productivity. We might be able to guess them. Tiredness is one of them. Procrastination, classic sort of, uni student stuff. Maybe just a little bit of distraction. There's one that's the greatest enemy though. It's the number one. It's the greatest enemy of efficiency and productivity. Anyone want to have a guess? It's people. People. People are the greatest enemy of productivity and efficiency. I was working from home last Wednesday and my kids came home from school about 3:10. I'm still on my laptop outside in our patio and Lily comes running over to me, my daughter, and she's just got an absolute world of stories to tell me. She's like, "Dad, I did maths today and it was so good. You said she's my friend. She was really funny. And then I did the cross country. I was really fast, but I was really puffed at the end because I'm not very good at breathing. And then I drew a picture of you because you've got a big head. I made you have a big head in the picture, so you got a really big head. Also, I fell over and I hurt my arm on the playground. Can you see it? Dad. I'm like, sorry, Lil. I'm just doing my work. Where's it sore? And she's like, "Right there. Look." So I'm like, "Sorry, Lil. I'm trying to do my work. Can you just go and say hello to the dogs? Just do something else for me." She's like, "Oh, fine." Same thing happens at the office though. I'll be at the office and Dan will come barging and he's like, "Jace, you should have seen, I just had this meeting. It was really funny. It was really good. And then, by the way, I took my scooter there. I was so fast on my scooter. You should have seen me. I was flying along. And then I got back and I thought, I'll draw a picture of you and Greg and Nick, and I drew you with a big head because we had to do a diagram in the church. So I thought, you have a big head. Drew you with a big head. Also, I fell off my scooter and I hurt my arm. See, Jace. I'm like, "Dan, go say hello to Greg. I'm busy, mate. Stop distracting me." It's like, "But I hurt myself." People, Dan's not here, so I can tease him. People are a bit of a distraction, a bit of an interruption, a bit of an inconvenience. Maybe it's not a problem for you. Maybe you're not worried about productivity and efficiency. But maybe for you, people interrupt your sleep, your book, your downtime, your rest, your TV show, your reading, like whatever they are, your sport that you're watching. People interrupt things all the time. They're an inconvenience. They're just in the way. Put it this way, how much easier would it be to go to work if you didn't have those certain colleagues that were around? Or if you're a teacher here and you didn't have any students, you could just teach the class and get on with it. No people to worry about, no behaviour management. How much better would it be driving on the roads without any traffic? No other cars to sort of get in your way. Or parents, if you've got parents of young people over here, it's my turn to pick on the young hats. How much better is a weekend when the kids are away because the house stays clean, right? I have this as little kids already. The house stays so much cleaner. I'm sure you guys look after young adults out there, your space, and you keep it tidy. But people are inconvenient. They're also necessary, obviously. I'm being a little bit facetious here, right? People are necessary. All of these things don't make sense without people. Workers and bosses, teachers and students, mothers, fathers, kids, husbands and wives. They can be inconvenient, but they're necessary. There's one group of people, though, that aren't. They aren't necessary. One group that is, therefore, a pure and genuine inconvenience. It's friends. Friends. Why friends? Because all those other people have a role to play. Or in other words, something that binds those people together. So workers and bosses and employees have a contract, a workplace agreement. Students must go to school. Teachers need to do their job and they have a responsibility to teach. Parents need to look after their kids. It's written into law, not to mention it's just instinctive because they're our children. Husbands and wives have a marriage covenant, binds them together. And those things, because there's a role, make there be a level of necessity. And necessity is the best motivator. It's the motivator for the relationship. Now, I'm not saying there's not love there, but there is a base, a foundation from which the relationship springboards from. There's something that motivates it, which in turn then diminishes the sense of inconvenience because you sort of feel like, well, it's part of my responsibility. This is something that I need to do. Friendship is completely different. There's no role, no contract, no agreement, no covenant, no legal requirements. Friendship is actually not necessary. And therefore, it's an entire inconvenience, at least to begin with. But this, in fact, is what makes friendship so special, so incredibly special. Famous author and theologian C.S. Lewis put it this way. He said, friendship is unnecessary, like philosophy, like art. It has no survival value, but rather it is one of those things which give value to survival. He also made this reflection. He said, to the ancients, friendship seemed the happiest and most fully human of all loves, the crown of life and the school of virtue. The modern world, in comparison, ignores it. Thomas Aquinas, who's a renowned theologian from the 13th century, he put it this way. He said, there is nothing on this earth more to be prized than true friendship. We're in week 2 of our series on what the Bible has to say about friendship. And if you have your Bibles with you, you're welcome to turn to John 15. But it's going to be up on the screen behind me as well, because better than C.S. Lewis and better than Thomas Aquinas is what Jesus has to say on this. Let's have a read. John 15, 13 to 15. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. You are my friends if you do what I command. I no longer call you servants, because a servant does not know his master's business. Instead, I have called you friends, for everything that I learned from my Father, I have made known to you. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. Jesus' context here is his looming death. He's quite literally saying that to die for one's friends is the greatest love. Why did he choose friends? Zach mentioned this last week. Why didn't he choose spouses, brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers, even God? Dying for God, right? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And yet he's chosen friends here. It's because friendship has no motivator, no role, no responsibility, no covenant, no contract. Jesus' greatest compliment to his disciples, after spending years with them leading up to this point, is to call them his friends. Because friendship is inconvenient. It's entirely optional, entirely chosen. And like I said before, this is what makes it so beautiful, so attractive. It's a pure, selfless love with no guarantee of return. And that's what draws us into it. We're loved simply for who we are. Nothing we bring. There's no agenda. But this is actually what makes friendship so hard as well. There's no agenda. There's no agreement. It means disruption. It means pure inconvenience. So my question today is how? Because we want friends, right? This is something, because it's so beautiful, so attractive, we want to have friends. How do we do it? How do we embrace inconvenience? No one wants to embrace inconvenience. In our age of exhaustion, which Zach called it last week, he's seen it called that, this age of exhaustion we live in, where we're all just absolutely knackered. How do we embrace inconvenience? That's the last thing that we want to do. But how do we do it for the sake of friendship? Well, I think there's no better place to start than Jesus. After all, he's called his disciples his friends. He spent 3 years with them and he's called them his friends. And here he was spending, this is the last moments that he has before he goes to the cross. That's the context of this passage. So how did he do it? How did he get there? See, Jesus is known for all sorts of things. He's known for his profound wisdom, for his miracles, for his teaching. He's known as a really good teacher and the best of all time. He's known for his death and resurrection. He's known as the Son of God. He's known for all these things, but I think there's one thing that sometimes we overlook Jesus for. I think Jesus is sometimes overlooked for his profound understanding of what it means to be human. Specifically, his incredible understanding of limits. Because after all, this is the limitless God of the universe in human form, right? It would make sense that we would overlook that. We see all of the things that make him God-like. But let me say it again. I think Jesus had an incredible understanding of limits. And I think for us, this is where the key to friendship lies in this. What I think we're going to find tonight as we look at Jesus, as we examine his rhythms and patterns, is that the path to beautiful and deep friendships, which is through embracing inconvenience and disruption, involves us understanding our limits. So I think there's two major themes, at least two major themes. We're going to fly through Jesus' life, look at his rhythms and patterns, and I think there's two major themes that come forward. They're not complex. They're actually really straightforward. But they are somewhat profound, and I think in an age of exhaustion that we find ourselves in, I think they're particularly helpful, particularly profound for us. So I'd encourage you to listen to them. These are the two themes. Jesus mastered his time, and he managed his energy. He mastered his time, and he managed his energy. Like I said, they sound obvious, but I think Jesus gives us some special insight from these two things, especially if you don't feel like you have the time or energy for friends. So the first is that Jesus mastered his time. Let's do a quick sort of fly through of his life for the 3 years of his ministry leading up to this point where he's called them his friends. First thing, he made time at the outset to think carefully about who he would invest in. So he's only chosen 12 people. The context is a room of his 12 disciples. He's called them his friends. There's the God of the universe, right, who probably has the capacity for 1,000 friends, who doesn't have a wife, who doesn't have kids, who doesn't have a house to maintain, and he's chosen 12. That's his upper limit. He's chosen 12 friends, and he did it so very intentionally. Luke 6:12-13. One of those days, Jesus went out to a mountainside to pray and spent the night praying to God. When morning came, he called his disciples to him and chose 12 of them. He then took time to be with only them. So he could have just sort of said, look, watch what I'm going to do because I've got an important job to do. I want you to do it too while I carry on preaching to the crowds and changing the world. But he actually took time to just be with his 12 consistently. Mark 6:30. The apostles gathered around Jesus and reported to him all they'd done and taught. Then because so many people were coming and going that they did not even have a chance to eat, he said to them, come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest. Another example in Luke 9:18. Once when Jesus was praying in private and his disciples were with him, he asked them, who do the crowds say I am? He invested his time consistently with these 12 guys. Consistently. And he then took time to explain things to them. Here's a few more examples. Matthew 24:3-4. As Jesus was sitting on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately. Tell us, they said, when will this happen? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? Jesus answered. Again, Mark 6:33-34. With many similar parables, Jesus spoke the word to them, as much as they could understand. He did not say anything to them without using a parable. But when he was alone with his disciples, he explained everything. And all the while, Jesus had all of this extra time, it seemed, to be interrupted. He was interrupted consistently. There's going to be a list behind me of a few of those things. A paralytic man was lowered down through the roof by friends, interrupting Jesus' preaching. And Jesus stopped and he healed him. He took that time. A woman with a bleeding issue touched his garment, interrupting the journey to heal Jairus' daughter. And he stopped. He took that moment and he wasn't in a hurry. He healed her. He spoke to her. He dealt with the whole issue. And in the meantime, Jairus' daughter died. And he went on his merry way and he still met them and their family and he healed Jairus' daughter. Another time, as Jesus was leaving Jericho, a blind man called out to him, interrupting his journey. And Jesus stopped and he healed him. And these are just 3 examples of countless. There are plenty of instances where Jesus is interruptible. He's inconvenienced. Here's where this lands me. Let me just illustrate it with a story. I'm sort of 15 years now into being a pastor, and early on in the first couple of years, we were part of sort of a young pastors gathering where they'd get an older bloke in who's been a pastor for a long time to just come and share his wisdom, come and give his insights to us. And this one time, one of these older guys was sharing about a young sort of associate junior pastor that came to sort of do a bit of an internship with him for 12 months. And this guy was from the Solomon Islands. This guy, he would rock up to late to work most days. He would rarely make a meeting on time. He was sort of just chilled most of the time. Even in those instances where people are waiting for him, he just sort of rocks up, pretty casual, pretty happy, pretty chilled. And so this older guy, who's his senior pastor, he finally confronted him one day and said, "Mate, you can't keep doing this. Like, I'm your boss. What do you think is going to happen here?" This guy casually turns to him and he says, "Yeah, you're my boss. I'm sorry. But do you know who your boss is? Time. And do you know who I'm the boss of? Time. Time doesn't tell me where to be. I tell time where I'm going to be. Jesus is my boss." Now, after getting fired for insubordination and insolence, and apparently a little bit of laziness, this guy shared just how profound that statement was to him, just how much it had stuck with him since he heard it. Now, obviously, there's a middle ground there because we have jobs to do and all the rest of it. But the concept is that time is not our master. Time is our servant. And I think some cultures around the world embrace this concept really well. The idea of the age of exhaustion would be foreign to them because they master time. And I think we can learn from them, and I think we learn from Jesus. What he models to us is that he was the master of his time. He had margin. He told time where he would be. He wasn't lazy or disrespectful, but he never appeared to be stressed or hurried because of a lack of time. And because of this time margin, he was able to be and happy to be inconvenienced and interrupted, which we saw. So I've got some thoughts. What does it look like for us to become, in Jesus' footsteps, the master of our time? Is it using a calendar and actually blocking out friends' time to make friends and be a friend? Is it cutting out some things to create margin so we can be inconvenienced, so we have the space for it? Or is it listing and reordering our priorities? There's only 3 and a bit years between all 4 of our kids. They're really closely jam-packed. I think there was one point there where all 4 of our kids were in nappies at the same time. There's a bit of chaos. That would be putting it lightly. At the same time, I was actually also studying my Masters of Divinity part-time and working full-time as a pastor. So I felt like I had about 14 minutes a week of margin. That's what it felt like through that time. So I took a lot of creativity through that season to actually think about this and try to embrace this concept of margin, of being masters of our time. But we've come out the other side, by God's grace, to be honest, that with friends. So it is possible. If you find yourself in a particularly busy season, I'd still encourage you to push into this. What does Jesus model to us in mastering our time, and how can we respond to that? A few thoughts there. The second then is energy. Jesus understood and managed his energy levels. We understand this bit probably sort of intuitively, right? We all know our energy is finite. Every day we replenish and deplete ourselves, eating, sleeping, drinking, exercising. And like time, we often take it to its limits. And that's a good thing in that it's productive, right? I said that at the start. It's good to be productive. But I think there are 2 problems with it. Like time, sometimes we don't actually leave energy for the things that matter, that we want to matter in our lives. Like time, we push our energy to the limits. But I think the second one, and this is the one that I want to sit on a little bit tonight, is that we fail to account for mental energy. Sometimes. I think this second one, we have to solve that first, in fact, before we can actually account for the first one in the first place. So let me just illustrate it with a couple of examples. For parents out there, how much energy does it take to consistently and patiently discipline your children? Raise your children. Do what it takes to raise your children. How much energy does it take to maintain a diet when all you want to do is eat the lollies or the chocolate or whatever it is? How much energy does it take to keep yourself from flying off the handle at work, maintaining composure, or just outright quitting? How much energy does it take to get back to the 15 to 20 unread messages and emails and all sorts of things that have come in overnight that you've got to try and find time for? None of these things require physical energy, but they all have a physical impact. How exhausting are those things? The problem is that we can feel like our mental energy is infinite. We know it's not because those things are exhausting, but we often don't think to account for their impact. And so what do we do when we're tired? We go to the things that are not an inconvenience. We lie on the couch, binge a TV show, scroll, eat the chocolate. And rightly so, because we're cooked. But that's the point. We haven't accounted for the mental energy that has happened, that has been drained throughout our day. And so I find ourselves exhausted. What I think we'll see as we look at Jesus' life is that he understood his energy limits as well. Across the board, he accounted for and replenished his mental energy. Let's have a look at some examples. There's a bit of a list. He slept in a boat, in a storm, mind you, in the boat. He rested after a long journey. He ate food and drank. He took downtime to party. He made wine at the wedding. He added to the festivities. He kept the party going. It says he participated in the whole thing. He was regularly accused, consistently throughout the scriptures, we see him regularly accused of being a drunkard and a glutton, a party animal. Regularly accused of that. Here's the limitless God with the most important role in all of history. That's not even arguably, it just is. If you're a Christian here tonight, you believe that. He has had the most important role in all of history, and he's embracing limits. He profoundly understands his humanity, and he embraces limits, sleeping, eating, resting, drinking, partying, apparently having no problem with it. It says in Luke 5-16, Jesus often withdrew to lonely places. Here's 3 examples. We'll go through them. Mark 1:35-37. Very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went off to a solitary place where he prayed. Simon and his companions went to look for him. And when they found him, they exclaimed, "Everyone is looking for you." Matthew 14:23. After he had dismissed them, he went up on a mountainside by himself to pray. Later that night, he was there alone. And again, Matthew 14:12-13. John's disciples came and took his body and buried it. Then they went and told Jesus. When Jesus heard what had happened, he withdrew by boat privately to a solitary place. What I think Jesus understood and accounted for was his mental energy that it was required of him to invest in people. We see him withdrawing, often to pray, to replenish his mental energy through being with the Father. But he often took time away even from his disciples. We see that there. Notice in these retreating instances, he's leaving them behind. He hasn't even told them what he's doing or where he's going. But he's retreated to replenish his mental energy because mental energy requires physical energy. And to have mental energy for inconvenience, which is going to have a physical toll to it, we must account for it. So here are some thoughts. Do you have energy to be a friend? Because being a friend means meeting someone on their terms, asking them questions, hearing their story, sharing a bit of your story, doing a lot of listening, serving them, being vulnerable, as Zach mentioned last week. Lots of mental energy without any guarantee of anything in return. Pure inconvenience. If not, is the limitation physical or mental, which still has a physical impact? What replenishes your energy and what drains your energy? What's one thing that could change to buy some energy for being inconvenienced? Here's an idea. This is just one thought I've shared with a lot of people that has seemed to be helpful at times. Grab a piece of paper or an iPad. You can do this now if you want. If you're sick of listening to me, fair enough. Get your iPad or your paper and put 2 columns and 2 headings at the start of the columns. The first one says, I have to, ... The second one says, I get to, ... And complete the sentence as many times as you can in those 2 columns. See what it looks like. Depending on your stage of life, there'll probably be a little bit of an imbalance. If you're still working takes up a fair bit of time. If you're raising children, that takes up a lot of time. And that's okay. But look at the whole thing and see what it looks like Let God use it to speak to you. Let him sort of, Lord, just let it sit with you and see what it feels like. Because you might actually find, as you look at that get to column, that actually there's not much there. There's not much space, not much capacity where you're being replenished. We have space for mental or physical energy. Because that's what it's going to take. Because the have to column feels like, oh, all right, I've got to do this. The get to column is like, oh, I'm looking forward to this. So that might be a way, it might be an exercise where you can sort of capture this for yourself to go, where is my energy level at? How do I become a master of this as Jesus was? I'm not one to naturally have friends. You probably gathered that at the start when I'm talking about people being inconvenient. All the rest of it, it's probably a little bit too close to home. This hasn't been easy for me to make friends in my life. I'm incredibly grateful for these people. It's a photo of our last camping trip with our best friends, really. 3 families. There's us with my outrageous hair. I don't know what's going on there. I think we're camping and I've just let it all go. There's the Sweetmans and then there's the Harrises. We've been friends with these guys for a long time, 15 plus years, long before I've been on staff here. And at first, our friendship was an inconvenience, probably for all of us. The small talk was awkward. Getting to know each other took time. Making a meal when we had kids. Going out for a beer. I hate the taste of beer. I still do. I'd prefer a whiskey or something, but I'm having a beer with the boys to just hang out with them. It felt like an inconvenience. Helping to move houses. Looking after each other's kids, which can be absolute chaos. They've poured out a lot of energy and time for me. This is Terry having fun with our 2-year-old at the time, Jack, when he was just a little bub. They looked after our kids for about a week and a half while my wife and I went and had my brother's wedding over in Costa Rica. I was his best man for the wedding. And so they had our 2-year-old Jack and our 3-year-old Lily for a week and a half. I'm fairly certain that most nights Lily and Jack ended up in their bed, keeping them up for most of the night, while Terry's still working and Jem's getting on with her life, parenting as well. They poured out a lot of time and energy for us. But what has happened over time, and I'm sure anyone here with close friends can attest to this, the inconvenience has slowly shifted to desire. Slowly shifted to desire. I still don't want the beer, but I really look forward to catching up with the boys. Every year when we go on our camping trip, it's a highlight of the year. We hang out for it. We look forward to it. We're going again this year in September. I hope we'll be friends, close friends, for the rest of our lives. But it's still going to take a measure of inconvenience, a measure of commitment, a measure of intentionality with our time and energy, a measure of being inconvenienced for the sake of their friendship. Perhaps you've tried this. Perhaps you're sitting there and you're going, yeah, that's good, Jace. I've been following Jesus' pattern for humanity for a long time. I understand time and energy, and I've embraced it. I've understood what it means to understand my limits and then put them into place and try and make friends. I've put myself out there. I've asked the questions. I've been to the things. I've been inconvenienced consistently, and I've still found it really hard to make friends. I still, even to this day, don't have close friends. And I would say, yeah, I feel for you, and it's hard, and it is hard making friends. But let me just leave you with one last encouragement. In John 15, that passage we looked at before, the word friends in the original language, that verse, so greater love has no one than this, than to lay down one's life for one's friends. That word friends in the Greek is philon. That word comes from the Greek root phileo, which is friendship love. Because the Greeks had different words for love, 4 different words for different types of love. We love the footy, we love a beer, we love chocolate, we love our wife, we love our kids, we love our friends. We sort of love all of it, and we know what we mean, kind of, but the Greeks actually distinguished them. And they had one for friendship, and it was phileo. This same word family is actually used then in John 21. So after Jesus has died and risen, and he's met with his disciples again, remember that John 15 passage was before he's died. He meets with his disciples again, and he has this interaction with Peter. Let me take a look. It's John 21, 15 to 17. Be up here as well. When they had finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" Yes, Lord, he said, you know that I love you. Jesus said, feed my lambs. Again, Jesus said, Simon, son of John, do you love me? He answered, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Jesus said, take care of my sheep. The third time he said to him, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him the third time, do you love me? He said, Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you. There's something really special that happens in this interaction that we don't quite get to see in the English. We still get the picture, we still get the meaning, but there's something special that happens. Let me spread it out. Are there any table lovers in the room? Engineers amongst us? No, just me. All right. Yes, Bruce, we're going to put the table up. This is spreading out what's happened. I forgot to put it, but above, after verse, those first 3 columns is Jesus. The second 3 columns is Peter's response to Jesus. What happens in this interaction is that Jesus twice asks Peter if he loves him with a love that is unconditional. And what Peter responds with is, no, I don't. He says, yes, I do love you. We see that in the English, but what he's saying is, I love you like a friend. Then Jesus stoops to Peter's level. He says in the third interaction, Peter, all I need from you is to love me like a friend. Do you love me with a phileo love, Peter? I don't need you to love me more than that. I don't need your unconditional love, even though that's what I give to you. This is what I give to you. I only want you to love me. I only need you to love me as a friend. Because here's the reality. There's a love that is greater than friendship. But it's a love that is only God's. It's agape love. It's not phileo love. It's agape love. It's unconditional love. A love that is not only not bound by anything, without a motivator, like friendship. It's a love that even when it's ignored, or rejected, or abused, or thrown back in your face, it's a love that keeps on loving. Friendship love doesn't often go that far. It rarely does. But agape love does. And you know what? That's actually the Greek word Jesus uses in referring to dying for his friends back at the start. He talks about philone, being their friends, the friendship love, but he says greater love has known than this. That love there, he uses agape. He says, that is my love for you, my friends. See, friends will come and go. And our love for them will depend probably on how much we're willing to be inconvenienced and how much they're willing to be inconvenienced for us. Peter decided that knowing Jesus was too inconvenient just before his death when he was accused of being a friend of Jesus. He denied him. It was too inconvenient. But agape love, that which is God's very nature, is unchanging. It is a love that is his and it's given freely and consistently to you. So when you're feeling discouraged with friendships or alone, isolated, disconnected, you've tried it all, draw on God's most amazing and incredible love for you, his agape love for you, and try again. Let me pray, hey? God, I'm certain we have no idea just how much you love us. We get it as a concept, this unconditional love of God, but I think it's going to absolutely blow us away when we see you face to face, when we experience just your great sacrifice for us. When we experience that love, God, I don't know what it's going to be like, but it's going to be incredible, and I thank you so much for it. I thank you that our friendship love that we can go out to with this world in trying to be and make friends, God, it's not something that we need to will up from inside us. It's not something that repletes our energy to the point of nothing, but actually we can be filled up with this agape love. And so, Jesus, I pray that tonight. I pray that for anyone in this room, particularly those that are suffering, those that are feeling like they've put themselves out there and that friendship has been hard. God, I pray that tonight, again, you would fill them with that unconditional agape love, saying, I love you, my son, my daughter. You can try again. And so, God, I thank you. I thank you for that great sacrifice for us. It all comes back to the gospel, to the good news of your pursuit of us. That even though we weren't friends with you from the start, we turned our back on you. You pursued us to the point of death and beyond, so that we could once again be your friends and God to be your children. And so we worship you tonight. We finish by singing out your great and glorious name. And I pray that as we go from this place, you fill us with that same love to love this world. So we thank you, Jesus. Amen.
Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed that. If you did and you want more Lifepoint content, subscribe to our channel right now. Or if you're in the area around Moreton Bay or Rothwell, head to our service. Sunday, we'd love to see you there. lifepoint.org.au for all the details. We'll see you soon.